Ladies, is it helpful or not to cry when you're arguing? Well, I tell you, this is one of my favorite articles, at least of the last, let's say, year or two, when we decided to do this podcast. So this was published in PLOS Biology, and the title is A Chemical Signal in Human Female Tears Lowers Aggression in Men.
What?
Da, 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 da. Yeah, so this was by Dr. Agron and her colleagues. And basically what they did was they had women cry to sad movies, women who had a tendency to cry easily. They had them cry to sad movies, and these women would collect their tears like in a special kind of way. So into cups after they cried. And then what they had guys do, heterosexual guys, they played a video game where there was like options to be aggressive, and they had to smell either these tears or they smelled like a saline solution. And then the researchers looked to see if the guys were more aggressive or less aggressive based on what they were smelling.
And what'd they find?
They found a huge reaction to the tears in that it lowered aggression like by 43%.
Before we start, a small disclaimer. The Sex Doctors podcast is not a substitute for medical or psychological advice.
Welcome to the Sex Doctors, featuring Dr. Marianne Brandon, clinical psychologist and diplomate in sex therapy, and Dr. Abraham Morgentaler, renowned urologist and expert in sexual medicine and testosterone therapy. Together, they bring you expert insights into sex, intimacy, and relationships. Let's dive in.
I believe in miracles. Where you from?
In what studies do you ever see that kind of effect?
Hold on. Let me get this straight. The men were sniffing tears.
They didn't know what they were sniffing.
They didn't know what they're sniffing.
No.
And the tears, if I read that article correctly, had no odor. There's no smell.
Correct.
So they're just smelling something.
Yeah, like a little
They
liquid.
go and they play their game.
Yeah.
And their aggression is reduced.
Yeah, by 43%. Like, how often do you see a research article that shows that kind of effect? Like,
It's incredible.
you never see
And
it.
it never would have occurred to me that tears have anything in there. I thought it was just some crazy human response to letting go of emotions.
Yeah. Well,
Oh my God.
so I found this very validating because as a therapist, I'm watching people argue every day of my
Right.
career, right?
Yeah.
People argue all the time. And so what happens when people argue is it's much easier to argue from a place of rage or anger. It's a much more protective place, really, emotionally.
Yeah.
So people, like, when they argue a point, they come after each other.
You
You.
did this. You
Right.
did that.
And then the impact of that on the receiver is like, I got to get out of here, right? Like, I need some air. Like, this isn't, there's no effective impact on the receiver. They just want space.
Right.
So, but the thing is, I encourage women to go under the anger, because when we argue, anger might be right there in front of us, but under the anger is a feeling of feeling threatened or scared or sad. There are more vulnerable feelings that we protect with anger. And if she's willing to go under that and find a deeper emotion and talk from that place, it's so much more effective. Now, it's often in that place she'll cry and she'll say to me, I don't want to do this because I'm going to cry. I say, forget the tears. Let them happen. That's fine. Just like go to that more vulnerable place. It is so much more effective.
So wait a second. Are you counseling women to cry? Because I have to say, on behalf of men
Everywhere, right?
it feels unfair to guys when the woman starts crying during.
Well-
it doesn't even have to be an argument, right? Like
Right.
a discussion, and she breaks down into a puddle, and the guy goes, I don't know how to deal with this.
Well, so to be fair, on occasion, there are women that can make themselves cry, and that's a manipulation, and that's not what I'm talking about here, okay? But the issue of men being overwhelmed by her tears, that's also something I deal with in therapy, because that's not going to fly. Like, he's got to be able to stay solid while she cries. Like, this is like just,
She's just crying.
you got to let it happen.
She's just crying. That's it.
Now, my understanding, the way I've sort of taken it is guys feel like always like they have to fix everything. So as soon as she's crying, now it's like putting them into high gear. Now I have to fix this. And they're like freaking out about that. So point one is I say to them, like, this isn't to fix. You just got to stay strong and breathe and be in the moment with her. And it's actually going to be so much more productive. So this is a very important role for men in heterosexual relationships, is to be able to just breathe through her tears. But he's going to find it a much more effective conversation if he's not being attacked, right?
Yeah, I love that. But coming back to this article and how it relates, what I get out of this is that it's not just the sight of a woman crying.
No.
And the vulnerability that comes along with that, and the guy saying, I don't know how to deal with this. This doesn't feel right. Right? Like the guy, whatever the mood the guy's in, if the woman is crying, it's hard to feel like you're not being a bad guy, right? I'm making her cry. But this study is saying is that there is a physical reaction of the men, potentially,
right,
to the chemicals that are in the tears.
Yeah.
And they didn't figure this out just from humans. They actually had investigated this in rats.
Which did draw my attention too, because I didn't realize rats cried.
I didn't know that rats cried. I mean, how do they watch sad movies like rom-coms? And I mean, what is that for rats?
But they also referred to dogs crying. Like, have you ever had a dog cry?
Well, they don't do it obviously they don't do it like that. So all it really is they're not necessarily crying, but they get the tear fluid.
Like just in the eyeball.
Where they get it, I don't know.
It's not coming down the face.
I didn't get that out of the article, how they got that. But it is in the tears. And it brings up this whole other thing about how, we've said most people think that humans don't have pheromones.
Yeah,
or
right.
in question whether they do.
Mm-hmm.
And pheromones are substances that are smell. You sense them through the nose. They don't necessarily have an odor.
Right. So you're not consciously knowing you're smelling them.
They're very well proved in all sorts of animals.
Yeah.
When I've talked a lot about how I did research as an undergrad with lizards. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if lizards have pheromones, but we also had snakes in the lab, garter snakes.
Oh.
And garter snakes' pheromones are really important, so that when the female is ready to
get it on,
she puts out a pheromone.
Well, women do too, don't they? There's all
Hold on, let me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And the males come from miles around. They sense it. And they come and they form this big ball. It's one female.
Oh, wait, I've heard about
like
this.
10 to 50 of these males come from all over, and they're all trying to insert their penis
in the
opening,
Yeah.
cloaca. And the amazing thing is, as soon as one of them is successful, there's a second pheromone that goes out, and the signal is gone.
Yeah.
And all the males just disappear. They don't know physically that somebody was successful.
Somebody got laid.
Right. But they disappear. It's almost instantaneous.
Wow.
And this is an example where these tears have no odor. The men are doing
right.
They have no odor. They don't have a smell. It's not like bread baking or something like that. But it has an effect on their behavior.
Right. Now, can I go back to the snakes for a minute? Did you see, like, I don't know if I've read this or heard this from you, but like in my mind, there's this ball of snakes rolling around.
Yeah.
Is that what happens?
Yeah, it's a mating ball.
And you saw that?
No, we didn't see it because we had them in, but I knew about it because we had those snakes in there. We had more controlled circumstances.
So did you have like frustrated snakes so that were like smelling the pheromone from the female and then they weren't allowed out of their cage?
We weren't doing pheromone experiments.
Okay.
We did have males put into cages with female, and we did different kinds of experiments till they had out the mate. Okay. That wasn't my experiment. I was with the poor lizards, but yeah, we had other people working with the snakes.
Interesting. So, there is there's a reasonable literature on females like dressing differently, acting more flirty when they're at the time of their cycle where they're fertile. like a lot of this research.
Yeah, and women who have menstrual cycles together when they're living together.
Yeah.
Right? There's some chemical signal that's going on around that
Right.
coordinates it.
And relatedly, getting more tips when they're a waitress or they're a dancer, like all this stuff.
Yeah.
So there's a whole mystery involved in all this. But
Yeah.
let's get back. You know what? Let me say, this isn't funny, okay?
No, I'm not laughing.
It's not funny.
I don't know what you're going to say, but I'm not laughing.
Let me just tell you. So when I was an adolescent and I had a horse and at a horse barn.
Horse.
And and there was a donkey that lived at the horse barn and everybody loved her. Her name was Catherine, very sweet. And on the day she was dying, she cried. Cried. She stood there. Tears were coming down. It was awful. It was awful. And she died that night. So mammals cry.
You saw her tears?
Oh, yeah. I was standing right there. It was horrible. Right. So who knows?
Mammals cry.
They cry. And it certainly made me sad.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to the article. That's just a little.
So, with rodents, what they're saying here that I thought was really interesting. So, the stimulus, the inspiration for doing this in humans was because they had done this research in rats. And
Which made me think of you with your
rat?
Well, no, but you. No, but you and your.
I'd rather be called a donkey, but then a rat. That's not so flattering either. But what they found was that I see some of this is in mice, some of this is in rats, is that there are these proteins in the tears that can give these signals that affect both the males and the females. So here, most aggression-related tear signaling appears to block rather than promote aggression. First identified in blind mole rats, where subordinate males cover themselves in tears.
I saw that.
To reduce dominant male aggression towards them. Clever.
Sad. See, it just for me what it's supposedly.
It's life, the circle of life.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Similarly, mice pups emit in their tears exocrine glands secreting peptide 22, which is a chemical that comes out in the tears, which reduces male sexual aggression towards them. These are the pups.
Yeah.
So there's something that's going on there.
Right. They often speculate, or they also speculated in this article by human infants, and they think that might even be the origin of this whole thing, that human infants can't, of course, tell you what's wrong, but they sure know how to cry, and it does initiate compassion on the part of their parents.
Yeah. Biologically, what I get from all this is that, we is that we're influenced by things that we're not even aware of.
So true.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And some of them we say, oh, it's behavior, woman's crying, I have a response to that. But some of it is chemical triggers.
Yeah.
That affect us.
Mm-hmm.
And us isn't just men. Human,
Absolutely.
right? In a whole variety of ways. We're just getting all these inputs all the time, some of which we know of and we can identify and name them, and some we don't know. And we call some of that the unconscious.
Yes, we do.
And some of it is unconscious in that we don't have awareness of it.
Right.
But there's something real that's going on. And it's not just some lost memory from the past.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so, in my opinion, the take-home message here is a more effective argument is rather than argue with anger coming at your partner, argue from a place of the pain that's under the anger. It's going to be much more productive in creating a compassionate experience so that couples can kind of work through a problem.
So do you have any advice for a man in a heterosexual relationship who just feels stymied every time his partner starts crying and feel like this is unfair, I'm being manipulated.
Yeah.
We can't actually have a decent conversation.
You know what? I learned this concept from David Deida, who's written a lot of spiritual sex books over the years. And it really is very helpful for men. And that is, think of yourself as an oak tree. As a man, you're an oak tree. And the female emotion is the weather moving through. So an oak tree can handle a storm. It can handle wind, whatever. And it really doesn't move. It just stands really solid and present in the weather. So what I suggest to guys is that's what they imagine. They like reach into the earth, stay strong, and be present. Don't shut down. That is not what this is about. Staying present, but letting the emotion just sort of wash over you. And it becomes a much more effective way for couples to connect when there's a lot of emotion.
And then the hope is that if the man can do that,
Mhm.
then the woman will calm down.
Absolutely. She'll find soothing and basically what she's looking for so that the couple can get into a more productive space and dealing with whatever the problem is.
You know, we started with chemical signals and tears,
Yes.
and we came to wisdom about relationships.
Well, there you go. It all connects, right? The biology, the emotion,
Yeah, they're all, on some level, they're all connected, aren't they?
they really are.
Well, let me just say that it's a pleasure for me to be here with you. And if you like this content, subscribe, give us a thumbs up, write a review if you're inspired. We'd love that. And we hope to see you again for another episode of The Sex Doctor.
That's right. Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to The Sex Doctors with Dr. Marianne Brandon and Dr. Abraham Morgentaler. Be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and tune in next time for more expert advice on sexual health and relationships.
I believe